I'm George Breeden with Association Tech News, and I'm here with Heinan Landa with Optimal Networks. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure, George.
So, Heinan, tell me a little bit about Optimal Networks. What do you all do?
Well, Optimal Networks, we've been in business for 20 years, and we're providing IT support services to nonprofits as well as small, medium-sized businesses in the DC metro area.
Okay, great. And so we were talking recently because you published an article with, I believe it was Association Trends, about the concept of the consumerization of IT. So it's an interesting topic. Can you talk about that for a second?
I can. It's an interesting trend, really, over the past 5 years, where traditionally we see IT departments calling the shots on what devices they're going to support. So this is why the BlackBerry got such terrific exposure in the marketplace, because it did email very well, it was highly secure, it used data very effectively, but it didn't have much sizzle. You know, it's kind of a boring device, but it worked very, very well. It still works very, very well, actually. I have one. And people would come into associations, executive directors and managers and people with authority, having just bought an iPhone from the store. They walk in and they walk into their IT department. They say, I love this thing. I need to get my email, and I need to get it fast.
Right.
So this became a trend, and it not just in nonprofits, but in associations, but across the board. And it's called the consumerization of IT. And basically, the article was sort of calling attention to it and saying, listen, if you're an IT department, if you're an association, you may want to think about this strategically instead of just letting it happen. The more devices you support, the more stretched your resources are going to be, and the less people are going to be happy with your support level of those devices. So you have to look at your culture. You have to look at, your regulation, your legislation. Are you Sarbanes-Oxley? Do you have to comply? Do you have HIPAA compliance issues? And you have to make some decisions on what are you going to support, what are you not going to support, or as maybe a good scenario, let's do a free-for-all. That does work. We will support Android, and we will support iPhone, or we will support BlackBerry, which is fine. But it's really, you want to do it consciously rather than just let it happen.
So the security is a big issue for a lot of organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I know that a lot of the manufacturers support the ability to do a remote wipe, and that's one of the things that organizations have to set up in advance, right?
That's right.
So it's important for people to have policies and procedures that if they are connected, that they let the IT department know if their device has been lost or stolen.
That's correct. It really helps to, when you're deciding what to support, you want to decide how you're going to support it, and you want to put in place some clear guidelines for people to understand how they can attach their machines, their iPads, their iPhones, their Androids to the corporate devices, to the corporate information.
Yeah, it's interesting. The mobile devices certainly add a new realm to personal security as well, because there are so many systems like our banks where if I forget my password, I can email it to me. Mm-hmm. And the premise has always been, well, the person clearly has access to their own email account. Well, now if somebody steals a phone and it's not locked, they basically have the keys of the kingdom to literally everything. And I don't think people are really thinking through that.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous. And now they're talking in the new generations of smartphones, having it replace credit cards, basically. So, right. These machines are going to be very, very powerful, and they already are. I think the iPhone can now be your friend and talk to you and not just.
Well, it's interesting because now they really are what Palm envisioned as a personal data assistant. I was never particularly impressed with the Palm, and I know that a lot of people are, but this, my iPhone really is my personal assistant on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
The other aspect of it is that this concept has been around for a while, but the manufacturers are now making it easier. So the problem used to be for the consumer that's trying to use it is to connect with the email. There were special software packages that were needed to put on the Exchange server or things like that. But now they all just connect to the same interface that the Webby does. So IT doesn't have the same excuse for not supporting them anymore.
It is easier to support. They are easier to support. And I should also say that I'm not advocating that associations clamp down on their IT and on their smartphone usage.
Right.
I'm saying that they should just think it through and make sure that they have the policies to accommodate and support people. Because if this is becoming a personal device, now I don't use my phone that way, but I do use my iPad that way. I'll take it around with me, and you'll have to pry it out of my hands. But you want people to be empowered like that. You want them to be able to walk around and answer their emails where they are on a big screen and do whatever web surfing they need to do or give a presentation. But you just want to make sure that they're doing it in the context of proper security and whatever other policies there are.
And I guess the reality, and this is where I was going, is it may even be out of IT's control because people can do it without their support now. They can just go ahead and link it up. So
to some degree.
To some degree.
But it's interesting to me that this war is no longer being fought with IT directors and CIOs. Mm-hmm. It's being fought out in the consumer battlefield. And if your phone or your tablet doesn't have enough sizzle, it's not going to win.
Right.
Yeah.
So what else is going on in the industry? Any other big trends that you're seeing?
There's some tremendous trends in the industry. Probably the most interesting one that I found is that we've had a very volatile economy for the past 3 years or so, maybe since 2009, and it's been tight with a recession and then a very flatlining of the economy, especially in this area in D.C., Maryland, Virginia. And what you see is that people have been holding on to their IT expenditures, and I'm talking about new workstations, new servers. People have been holding on to these things and really trying to stretch those IT investments, waiting to see what would happen, waiting to see if the economy would open up, which it doesn't show any signs of doing. And now the equipment is just getting so old that organizations are having to do a full refresh, and they're looking up and they're seeing that there is an incredible maze of technology that they have to get through in order to figure out what to do. Do they virtualize? Do they do a physical server replacement? Do they buy all new desktops? Do they do virtual desktops? Do they do cloud computing? There's so many options that have come down in the past 3 to 5 years as the landscape has changed that they need some direction, and we have been finding many of our clients asking us to do strategic plans for them and also to offer them ongoing kind of CIO services to help guide them through this sort of technology.
I think you said fractional CIO.
Fractional CIO. So if you don't want to buy a whole CIO, you could have just a fraction of one, maybe coming to your office once a week, twice a week to perform the function.
Great. And so one of the things that we were talking about is the concept of the virtual desktop. This has been the promise for many a year that, we're not going to have to upgrade our PCs, every 3 years anymore. And what's your sense on, is that coming true?
My sense is it's not coming true. My sense is that with all the virtualization, and this is kind of the underlying technology for the virtual desktops, is that you can virtualize all your desktops on one central server or 3 central servers in your LAN room, in your computer room. Is that while it's starting to come together on the technology side, VMware and Citrix are really putting out very strong products in this regard. The cost justification isn't there yet, and it's just a lot more expensive because not only do you have to buy the servers and you have to buy the virtualization software and you have to deploy it and you have to manage it, but you still have to have some kind of machine on everybody's desktop.
Right.
And to run it on the older machines is a little problematic. I mean, they're still going to fail, especially if they're 5-6 years old. They're not going to last that much longer. And to buy these smart terminals, which is just the new name for dumb terminals,
right.
They're still $300 for a decent one. And I'm not sure that they've figured out all the audio visual kinks there, like when you're dealing with the streaming multimedia and so on. So you have the user experience isn't quite as rich as having a real PC on your desktop, or Macintosh, I guess, if we're distinguishing. So I don't think it's there yet.
For the virtual desktops?
For the virtual desktops, I don't think it's there yet.
Obviously, virtual servers and the back office server room is taking off like crazy.
100%. We see that being considered by every one of our clients in their imminent upgrade cycle. So anyone who's looking to do a server upgrade is definitely considering, and in most cases going to some sort of virtualized platform.
I think that for the nonprofits, and you can tell me if you feel the same way, because nonprofits have a tendency to be smaller and each of us do something different, it doesn't make as much sense as a 1,000-seat organization where everybody's doing exactly the same thing, a very heterogeneous environment where we all have the same applications. We're not allowed to look at video and audio, where in the nonprofit world is actually being encouraged more as we embrace social media and we want to look at the messaging we convey and what other people are saying about us.
Yeah, the virtual desktops, if you're going to look at the cost analysis on why to implement virtual desktops or VDI, the big claim is that the management of that environment will be a lot simpler. Why? Because all your desktops are actually sitting on one centralized server or two centralized servers. So you should be able to manage them all in one fell swoop. Well, that's okay if they're all looking exactly the same. Otherwise, you really do have to get into each and every one of them. And if you're going to do it on the server, you might as well just go out to the desktops and let people have the full desktop experience, and it'd be cheaper.
And not annoy them.
And not annoy them.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for visiting with us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
And we'll
My
see
pleasure.
you around
Thank
next time.
Okay.
Thanks.